Just taking a walk, and something came to me. There's an article that I read where they were talking about whether kids are getting smarter or not. And this actually made me think, given that I have two kids of my own, right? The first question I asked was, is it true? Is it true that our children are getting smarter? And simply putting it, I then looked at my own kids, right? My daughters, one is turning 9 this year, the other just turned 6. And in conversation with them, whenever they ask me questions, I simply paraphrase it right back to them so that they can figure out whether there was a need for them to ask me a particular question. Sometimes I simply ask it to them at the most basic level, such as, what do you think? So if they ask me, is the sky blue today, just for as an example, right? I'd simply ask them, what do you think? And then they'd come back and say, yeah, it's blue, but the clouds are white, right? So they are smart enough to input on the very same inquisitive question that they had. They just needed some form of confirmation, validation, verification from me. But it made me dig deeper. Went to the internet, our first source of information in this day and age, and I asked a simple question. Are kids getting smarter? And an article from 2016 generally said that yes, every decade or so, the IQ of kids increases by 3 points. So in 10 years' time, the generation that will come will be a 3-point IQ smarter than the generation that is today, right? Meaning their input variables, they'll be able to absorb information much quicker. They'll be able to comprehend information much quicker. And then I went on and dug deeper. And then that basically demonstrated that that's one part of looking at intellect, intelligence, and the general smartness of our population. Because there's a term called Hypertech retardation. And what that relates to is that because information is so readily available, because information is there at a heartbeat, the levels of comprehension, meaning the work that needs more detail, such as us now living in a world where we need to basically break down information for longer periods of time. We are in a world where we read 30-page reports. We observe information and look at the details. This hypertech retardation speaks to them being fed information far quicker in their attention span, and therefore, by impulse, the implication is that their retention of information dwindles down. So whereas we could have absorbed information much quicker and then kept that information, that's why in earlier assessments of whether a person was smart or not, it would be more so whether a person can memorize information more than the next person, right? It was more so whether a person could regurgitate a certain set of information more than the next person. This generation does not need to do that. They are in an advantaged position. Information is readily available, and your levels of being smart are not determined by whether you can regurgitate a particular set of information. So growing more broadly and looking at things more broadly, are our kids really smarter? Because there are things that need their ultimate attention. There are things that need their unique positions and perspectives. And will they be able to appropriately articulate, comprehend, and confer that information to the next person? Or will the focus be on a quick understanding of things such as coding, video game programmers, understanding technology, and being hypertech, as that retardation statement goes, right? So yes, their IQ has increased, but will they necessarily be more productive? Looking at my kids, they are exposed to everything. it's TV, it's games, it's our phones, high levels of technology, but they are still in touch with the ground. They still do the extramural activities at school, right? My daughters, they play the piano, they do activities such as drummies, they do athletics, they play tennis, they do swimming. They get as much exposure as is flipping possible. So then the question is, will they then be considered smarter than the next people who are their peers? And it depends. It depends because we also have to look at their schooling system currently. Are they attending a private school versus a public school? When we consider upcoming videos where I'll do videos around our education system, I'll do videos around the public education system versus the private education system, would look at the optimistic views, in other words, the positive attributes of each schooling system and the negative attributes of each schooling system. And then we'll also look at the advancement of society by those particular school systems. Which school system would have had more of an impact on the world that we live in today? Given that we live in a capitalistic system, it's largely a privatized school network of kids that have built up these particular systems. And therefore, they would be considered smarter than our own kids. It also goes down to opportunities. How many opportunities have my kids received versus their peers? How many opportunities have they grabbed that have given them the ultimate advantage of liaising, negotiating, networking with, and dealing with people from other aspects and prospects of life that may lead them to becoming more successful? Will they go into business, for example? Because now we're also living in a world where if you do business, you're considered to be successful in society's norms, right? You are laughed at and you are looked down upon when you have a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 4, as is also common in our country. So there are many attributes and many things that we actually have to look at, and there are many considerations that will also have to be made in relation to the determination of whether children, as time go by, are considered smarter than the actual previous generation. Also, at the same time, we need to look at the role that the previous generation has actually played in making sure that the generation of now actually succeeds. The foundation, the fundamental inputs that they themselves would have had to put in so that the generation of now can also be considered the smart generation. There's just so many factors that we need to look at. And that's just a thought that came to my mind. Are our kids today smarter? And it also depends on the parenting system and parenting structure. Are you giving your kids a spoon-fed type of life? Or are you actually giving your kids an opportunity to think for themselves, live for themselves, and actually make decisions that affect them? Because they are young now, there's not a lot of input I can make in terms of their future. All I can do is build the necessary foundation right now so that they have the basis to actually succeed as much as is possible. So I hope I've triggered some thoughts on your side as well. Let me know, are kids of today actually smarter? Looking around your own neighborhood, looking around your own surroundings, looking at the kids that you interact with, looking at their actions, how they think, how they behave around certain situations, how they network with others, how they collaborate with other human beings. Are our kids actually getting smarter? I can't wait to hear your views. Of course, you gotta do what's right. Like, subscribe if you like this content, and I'll go into deeper detail, more research content, particularly when we speak to factors, systems, and other attributes that affect our lives right now and beyond. But otherwise, it starts with you. Love you long time. Cheers, guys.